Oh,
Ooh.
welcome everyone. Thank you for tuning in today. I am Amanda, the owner of the Nautical Dog in Williamsburg, Virginia. Today I'm here with Amy Renz. She is the founder and the owner of Goodness Gracious, which is a great product we're going to talk about. But if you're in the audience and you're watching, make sure you comment, tell us you're here, tell us hello. Make sure you comment with that hashtag, the more you know. We have our summit coming up. It's in like 2 weeks, which is crazy to me. Crazy. But we are going to raffle off a book today. And the only way to get into that raffle is to comment with that hashtag. The book that we're raffling off, in case you haven't heard about it, you probably have. I've talked about it a lot. It's been on the internet. It is the new Forever Dog Life book. It is the sequel to the Forever Dog by Dr. Karen Becker and Roddy Habib, who will be at our summit as speakers. So thank you again, everyone. And thank you for coming on, Amy. Would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us who you are, what you do in short, before we get into the thick of all the science and fun things.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm pumped to be here. This is really special and an honor to connect with you, Amanda, and all of the folks that are really passionate about taking care of their companion animals. So I as you mentioned, I own, operate Goodness Gracious. So we're a small manufacturing facility and pet food company in Massachusetts. So we're a licensed and inspected human food facility. We make everything ourselves. And so I got into, if you're interested in the backstory, I mean, I kind of tell you a little bit about that.
Please tell us. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So gosh, I liberal arts education, right? Didn't really know what I want to do. I think like so many of us, right? My sister was a veterinarian. So she is a veterinarian. She had a calling. She knew rescued chipmunks when she was 3 years old, so she knew what she wanted to do, but not me so much. And but we grew up with animals, and in 2007 I got my first dog, Grace, who became the inspiration for Goodness Gracious, although I didn't quite know it at the time. And then about 6 months later I got Lula, who was a sister for her, who became the inspiration for Hula Lula, which is a single ingredient jerky that we make. But 2007, so I'm old enough to remember that we had a melamine issue in 2007, where all of this wheat gluten was purposefully tainted with melamine to spoof protein levels and sickened and killed thousands of dogs and cats. And it's probably still the largest recall ever in pet food history. So, and then 2009, we had chicken jerky that gave a lot of dogs and cats kidney failure that we never really did find the reason for it. The problem just kind of went away. And then there was a large pet food company whose employees got sick from exposure to toxic mold and fumigants. And I, as a pet parent, mom, because they're our kids, became really distrustful and angry and concerned, and started making food for them at home because I just didn't know what to feed them, and in hindsight, did a really bad job because at that time it was basically Dr. Google. There wasn't a lot of information available about how to do that appropriately. But I don't mind telling people how old I am. So, because I kind of alluded to it already. So in 2009, I turned 40, and I started asking myself, who are you helping? And I was running a small software company at the time, didn't have a good answer. I thought I also learned about how many companion animals we euthanize. We were doing then. It's better now, but it's still too much, right? I mean, any amount is too much. And so at the time, it was about 3 to 5 million a year, because people just failed them, right? I mean, they looked at, and this, Schwartzy Cat Cove, right? I mean, this is passion. And so I thought that if I could create a company that did something super helpful and healthy for our companion animals that have homes, and uses those funds to give back to address this homelessness problem, then that is my answer for who am I helping. And so I formed Goodness Gracious, committed to that purpose. And we still do. And at the time, we set out to donate 51% of our profits to community animal shelters and rescues wherever our treats are sold. We grew way beyond that from 2010, which was when we first launched and made our first batch of treats. And so we were a treat company when we started, single ingredient jerky, some biscuits. grew some of those treat lines. And then in 2014, Grace, who was then 7, got sick. And she got Lyme, Anaplasma, and Rocky Mountain spotted fever all at once. And any one of those tick-borne diseases would be a force to deal with. And she had 3. And that really creates a complicated picture. And at the time, she also received atrocious medical care. And to the point of her doctors tested for tick diseases, never told me she had them, and then prescribed her prednisone. Yeah. So it caused a massive immune-mediated disease that essentially robbed her of her ability to walk, gave her relentless fevers, tremendous amount of muscle wasting, lost her ability to swallow water, lost her ability to swallow at all. But through a path, more of a integrative, holistic path that we ended up finding, could finally eat food. She just couldn't really drink water. So ended up finding Dr. Steve Marsden, who I think we all know, right, in Edmonton, Canada. And so I live in Massachusetts. So Edmonton is across the country, right? And so Grace and I flew there a number of times to get her care. And eventually she just couldn't take those trips anymore. And through him, we found another veterinarian, a colleague of his, who was at least in my time zone in Vermont. And so Dr. Nate Heilman, who is, in my mind, one of the foremost practicing integrative veterinarians of our time. And we ended up driving to see him 4 hours up, about 3 hours of treatment, and 4 hours home every Monday for 4 years. And her conventional doctors, before I did that, gave her 3 months. Told me they could make her comfortable. So we got 4 really good years. And I thought, when I ended up losing Grace, I had thought that, it was a really dark time. And because I thought going through all of that the purpose of our journey was to, I thought I was going to cure Lyme disease and then take that cure to help a whole bunch of other bodies, a whole bunch of other beings. And when that really didn't happen, like I never got her out of her wheels, it was really hard. And I needed to, I didn't know what my purpose was. And then I discovered a little while later that, no, that wasn't what I had thought wasn't our purpose. What our purpose really was far, far greater. And it was to shield as many as we could from disease process in the first place. And that begins with diet and nutrition, and, food is medicine. So I took the nutritional information and design for feeding that I had put Grace on, put Lula on, put our other dog on, and to bring that to market. And so that resulted in some, 5 really cool diets for dogs that are in Nautical Dog, and 2 diets for cats, and then a line of restorative diets that we're coming out with.
Not wait for those. Let's talk about those. But those are really cool.
Yeah.
I just want to, go back to something that you touched on very briefly, which means so much to me. And I think a lot of people who are watching this, and if you know me, I am a huge animal rescue or advocate. I have a very hard time saying no to hospice animals. I have 11 animals at my house, and, I opened the Cat Cove. Like it says it on the back of all of your packages, and this is no joke. You guys donate back 51% back to animal rescue. So when you buy this food and you're interested in this food, not only are you doing something good for your animal, you're also helping another animal. And that means so much. I mean, you have these, big, huge companies, and, they're posting that they, do whatever. The amount that they donate back on the scale of what they sell is so minute. And there's a reason why they're doing it too. They're funding vet schools. They're doing all of these other things. So kudos to you. I love that. Even if I wasn't like in love with your product just as a standalone, like that would sell me there, because like, oh, it's going to help a animal that actually needs something. So yeah, love that. And then, yeah, so what brought you, so Goodness Gracious is a gently cooked food. And I'm going to just say right now, like, gently cooks are kind of the new thing. Not that they're not new, but
Yeah.
they're the new, like, you hear about all these like direct to consumer, direct to, all these online things. It is a very, people are coming in asking for, your farmer's dog, your ollies, your nom nom, all of those things. So when I first found out about you guys, I was like, oh gosh, not another gently cooked. you know, it's one of those things like, oh, we don't need another gently cooked. And then I learned about your foods, and holy hell, they're like so different. They are not like just the standard. So when people come in and they're looking for a gently cooked, I'm like, let me show you this one and let me tell you why that's different. So I know we want to talk about like why, whole gently cooked foods are like great for your dog, but really, or cat. But can you just tell us a little bit about Goodness Gracious and like what does make it different than a lot of the other brands? Because it's way different, you guys. Like, you guys are in for a treat for this one.
Yeah. So we have a different approach in many different ways. So we're all about high protein, moderate fat, low carb, right? And glycemic load of 1 and absolutely zero synthetics, like no synthetics, no fortified ingredients. And it may surprise you and most people, I think, to learn that, gently cooked food can have super high protein levels, higher than raw. I think most people think that raw food, when they see 90 to 95% meat and bone, they think that, oh, that's super high in protein. And, there's a lot of things that go into meat, right? It's moisture, it's protein, it's fat. Meat and bone has ash in it, little bit of sugar, because how the way body stores glucose in muscle. But so, that's really not indicative of the amount of protein that's in food. And so from a macronutrient perspective, we have the highest protein levels of any food, regardless of the format, that I've been able to find. We also make our food in a really cool way. So where a lot of gently cooked foods might sous vide, so they put all of the ingredients in a plastic bag, they submerge that bag in hot water, and then the contents of it cook inside that plastic bag. That is not something that we want to do for a couple of reasons, right? First of all, you're exposing food to plastics, which we're not a fan of. You're putting plastics into the universe, which we're definitely not a fan of. We're also, when all of that stuff goes into a bag, you're cooking your protein for the same time and temperature that you're cooking your vegetables. And we all know, if we ever step foot in a kitchen, a pork chop is going to cook a lot longer than some spinach. And so what happens is you end up overcooking and cooking out all of the nutrients that are in those vegetables that you might include in the first place. Some of the names that you mentioned too, farmer's dog, my ollie, nom nom, I kind of think of them as potato salad, right? I mean, there's a lot of starch in those kinds of foods. And that's not something we do. We're talking about 2%, 4% by weight of a recipe being one orange root vegetable. So there's no grains, there's nothing white in what we do. And so how we cook, or how we make our food, is we cook some things and we don't cook other things. So we will, and we cook those ingredients that we do cook, we cook them separately. So we use steam. It's a steam oven. It's 212 degrees in this environment. So relatively low temperature, especially when you compare to like kibble that's cooking at 400 degrees or whatnot. So, so the food, just like a pork sirloin, would go into our steam oven and cooked until there's a food safe internal temperature. What that temperature is varies a little bit by what protein you're doing. Chicken, beef, pork, fish are all a little bit different, but it's a human food facility. So we have to cook it to human food safety internal temperature standards. We rapidly chill it. And then we'll do that with our organ meats, and we'll do that with we cook our vegetables, each one separately, just until we can break down that cell wall, right? So our broccoli will get steamed, our spinach will get steamed, or if we're using kale or Swiss chard, those will get steamed. If we're using carrots or a sweet potato, we'll do that. And then once everything's cold, then we'll combine it. And so we combine it with things that we don't cook, which would be like our fruits. we're starting to use in some of our new restorative diets organic, locally sourced broccoli sprouts and mung bean sprouts. Those things don't get cooked. We are also using certain like sprouted sunflower seeds as a source of organic sprouted sunflower seeds as a source of vitamin E. Those things don't get cooked. And very importantly, our fish oil doesn't get cooked. So our fish oil remains cold the entire time, up until, the whole time. Actually, we add it cold, we package it, we freeze it. So
why do you not cook the fish oil?
Yeah, because it is extremely fragile, and so it will oxidize and it will create those ALs, advanced lipoxidation end products, that are extremely damaging to kidney tissue, pancreatic tissue, our blood vessels. So we don't ever want to heat our fish oil. And
are
so then
fish oils generally cooked in foods?
What's that?
Are fish oils generally cooked in
They
foods?
can be, right? When you're talking about sous vide methods or other kinds of baking methods, generally most manufacturers will add everything together, cook it, and then bag it. And, we have more of it's definitely more labor intensive process, right? But it's a higher quality food. And it's one, like, what we tried to do, and I think we succeeded really well at, is in making food in our facility like mom and dad would make it at home, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mom and dad are never going to heat their fish oil. They don't. They don't have a need to. And so that's how we make it.
Yeah, it is very different. It's very palatable too. It's hard to explain if you're comparing it to others. I don't know how to really explain the consistency. A lot of gently cooks tend to be kind of congealed, like together, and just kind of, yours is, it looks like food. Like I don't know. You'd have to like see it in person, but like it looks
like food, right? I mean, kind of
right. And it should look like food. And obviously not knocking any other gently cooks, and we sell some other like fantastic great gently cooks in the store. But I love, we're talking about you and what you guys do today, how transparent you guys are. I mean, do not get me started on the gently cooks that you buy online. I won't name names. You can figure them out for yourself if you're watching. But they don't tell you the ingredient text, which is wild. People come in all the time and they're like, well, I feed XYZ. It gets shipped to my house. What is something comparable? And I'm like, well, I can't even tell you what's comparable, because if I go to their website, they will not tell me what the ingredients are. Like, I can't even, you can't find it, which is insane to me. Like,
mind-blowing.
What is in your food, what exactly like the numbers are on the analysis, if you're looking for those things. And it's crazy to me that you can't find it. So the only way to find it is you have to type all your information in, and they make you think that they're making a certain batch of food for your dog. Newsflash, they're not. There's like 5 recipes that they like rotate through. But you should know, and like, you're very transparent about where your ingredients come from, what is in it. If you list a lot more of the analysis on the back than a lot of other brands do. And if you don't know it, if it's not listed, I can email you or email someone else at Goodness Gracious and find it. And it just makes things very easy. Like, you guys break down ash content, which a lot of people don't break down ash content. And that's important, especially if your dog and like kidney failure or anything like that. So, and I'm going on a tangent about that, but it's great to see.
Thanks. Yeah, it's super important. I mean, we put like our country of origin on our website for all the ingredients that we buy. Like our fish oil is sardine, herring, mackerel, and anchovy. I mean, it's not trash fish. It's not a byproduct of something else. Like, it's Icelandic sardine, herring, mackerel, and anchovy, and which are recognized by the National Research Defense Council as the safest, cleanest, most abundant fish. And we put our nutritional profiles, our AFCO nutritional profiles, on our website, because that's really important. And on the back of our packaging, we have our macronutrient calories, because that's really important. I mean, truly, the guaranteed analysis on pet food is useless. Like, you cannot compare one food to another. You don't know what you're feeding your dog. If humans had to, if that was the label and that was what you were told to as your own diet, you'd have a hard time determining, am I eating protein, fat, or carbs? Like, it's useless. And
So what
yeah,
is, and I'll bring up, and I think it's going to be another 5 years before it takes place. AFCO did actually make a change for everyone watching that in the future, the nutritional analysis on the back will have to tell you carbs, and it will have to tell you those things. They do not right now, which makes it very, very hard to determine your carb content. And if you're looking at a dog or a cat that has cancer, newsflash to everyone: stop feeding them carbs. Like,
yeah,
stop, get them off of kibble, put them on something very low glycemic, not a lot of carbs, because cancer loves carbs. I mean, the newest data out there is that 1 in 3 pets are going to get cancer. So we really shouldn't be doing all the carbs to begin with, anyways. But here we are. And this is the subject for a different day, because this is going to be a live that I'm going to have to do with you, because it'll take an hour to like explain. But you came to the store and showed me how to figure out the carb content. And I will tell everyone, if you are coming to the summit, that's in July, I made a magazine, y'all. Add it to the list. This is a magazine that
that looks
so
so beautiful.
I'm so excited about this. I don't know how people write books, because this took me a very long time to do this. But in this magazine, directly from you, is the calculations and everything of how to figure that content out. So, you guys that are getting this magazine, that are coming to the summit, you're in for a treat. There may be some more in the store afterwards, but we're going to have you back on so you can discuss that. That's a whole nother thing. I have it if you want to come to me as well. But we do have some questions, and I know we haven't really even got into our whole topic here. For starters, someone asked, where did it go? Is Goodness Gracious available anywhere around Atlanta? Do you know?
Oh, around Atlanta. I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Email Goodness Gracious. Go to their website,
Yeah,
and you can email Goodness Gracious.
yeah.
And that was for Mary Ann. And then Lauren, you did say that you wish that one of your dogs loved it and your other dogs love it, but you don't have one. I have a really picky dog. All she needed was it at room temperature and slightly warmed up a little bit. So I put it in like the bag and hot water, and I think it just made it for my senior dog. So you might want to try that. Tara wants to know, what protein would you suggest to try first if you have a picky eater when it comes to trying new food? And do you ship, or can you get it in Texas?
We definitely ship to Texas. And so God, I can tell you our top three sellers. So, and it is a little seasonal, but turkey, pork, and beef are our top three sellers. And it's seasonal because we're in the warmer climate too right now. So that's maybe one of the reasons that I was kind of driving turkey sales up. But all three of those, all of them feed really well. But those are our top three sellers.
I would like to point out, you guys have a rabbit.
We do have a rabbit. Yeah.
You have a rabbit.
Yeah.
Which is hard to come by, and just food in general. And then you have it for the cats too. So I would like to say, in terms of cats, for all of the cat people out there, we know cats are picky. They don't like a lot of things. I've got 6 cats, so I can test things on my cats to see if they will like it. And they are used to eating a raw food diet. My cats will eat Goodness Gracious. I've never been able to get them to eat agently cooked food. They will eat Goodness Gracious. I discovered they liked Goodness Gracious because I was feeding it to my dogs one day, and they came over and started to try to eat it out of the dog's bowl. And I was like, oh, wow, shocking. And the store manager has been feeding the Goodness Gracious to her cats too. And she's like, oh my gosh, I don't have to mix in cans with it. They just eat it the way that it is. So it is really palatable. So anyways, back to, first of all, anyone who has newly joined us, make sure, I see Emily did, make sure you comment with that hashtag, the more you know, because we're going to raffle off that book in a little while. Amy, would you like to talk about why feeding a whole food, gently cooked diet to your dog or cat, the benefits of it, and why it is so great?
Yeah, for sure. So I think, I feed our food to our, I mean, that's what I feed my dogs, right? And my dogs are still
I
young.
would hope to be
Well, you know, if you work for Purina, I doubt you're feeding that to, but that's a side, get soft kibble, right? So, um, but so I think, you know, one of the wonderful things about gently cooked food is, you know, I'll first start off saying that something that Rita Hogan, who's going to be your guest on Friday, says,
Yeah,
right?
tune in Friday. I've
Yeah,
got Rita come in on at 1 o'clock Eastern
right.
Friday.
Yeah. So what she says all the time is dogs are individuals, and they are, you know, they're like us. What the diet that's right for one is going to be different maybe than the diet that's right for another. So where we find our diets really shine is in kind of three areas. So one of them is when we're trying to transition a dog from an ultra processed food to not processed food, right? So that can be a raw, or it could just be transitioned to gently cooked, but it's a really nice transition food. It's also great for dogs that might be dealing with a health issue. And it's really awesome for dogs as they get a little bit older, you know, and by old age or middle age, I'm talking like 5 or 6 years old. So not what we think of as old age. You know, Mars did a huge study. They looked at 13 million dogs visiting 1,000 of their VCA hospitals and determined that the average age at time of death was 10.6 years. So, you know, mid age is like 5,
And
6.
that is way too young for a dog
Yeah,
to be
it
processing
is.
a
It
food.
is. And part of that, you know, I mean, part of that's driven by the environment, but part of that's driven by processed foods.
Yeah.
And you know, and exercise. Like, you know, you can't medicate your way out of diet, you know, bad diet, not moving, and emotional stress. So,
Yep.
um, so that's why I think some of, you know, our diets really shine, especially. So why, right? I mean, what's happening in the body? And so digestion, right, is everything from the mouth to the butt, and food goes in and it gets transformed into packets of fuel and signals. And then those things get moved around the body through our blood vessels and our nerves and our endocrine system. And so when we eat, you know, our blood sugar rises, and your pancreas secretes insulin from that gets picked up on little receptors on your cells, and it tells those cells to take up glucose and store it as glycogen, like in your muscles and in your liver. And insulin resistance is when those cells don't respond to insulin like they should. And so consequently, blood sugar rises, and high blood sugar damages blood vessels. And it targets those really, really fragile ones first. And those are the ones that are really susceptible to damage. And it turns out that those really fragile blood vessels are in places that you might not expect. First up, the center of the brain. And so we have a ton of little blood vessels that kind of dead end there. And when we have damage to those blood vessels, we can start to see memory problems, things that might look like disinterest or be interpreted as depression or mood, or you know, anxiety issues. So behavior really is connected to diet. And when people have a dog that they think, you know, has a behavioral issue, it's not just a training issue, or it's not just a reason to reach for Prozac. I mean, we really need to be looking at the diet. It also targets our eyes. We have tiny little blood vessels in our eyes, so we can start to see vision problems. It targets the blood vessels that feed the microscopic little nephrons in your kidneys, which are those filters that are responsible for cleaning out toxins and controlling electrolyte balances, right? Sodium and water. Your kidneys are also really responsible for helping with the formation of red blood cells, because it releases a hormone called erythropoietin. So health of our kidneys is super important, and they can get damaged by high blood sugar. And it also starts, so now you have all of this. It also starts to damage the blood vessels that feed the nerves throughout the body. So you can start to see neuropathy or neuromuscular weakness and problems. So you've got high blood sugar and it's not getting stored. So your body wants to store it as fat. So it's going to store it as fat around your body and around your organs. It's going to store it as fat in your liver. It's going to store it as fat in your pancreas. And and this fat deposits will cause inflammation and damage. And so when you damage your pancreas, which is the organ that produces insulin in the first place, and you couple that with insulin resistance, you've got diabetes. And diabetes opens you up to a whole series of problems, more obesity, cardiovascular disease, liver disease, which can put you at risk for liver cancer, as well as a whole bunch of other forms of cancer. So one of the problems that also happens from all these fat deposits is a problem with the way our body creates and breaks down fat. So we start to have dyslipidemia. We can see this in human medicine as like higher cholesterol levels, right? Higher triglycerides. And these things start to build up plaques on those beautiful little blood vessels that are already kind of damaged from high blood sugar and cause constriction in them, right? You have plaques that decrease the size or the pathway. And now you've got high blood pressure because you've got blood trying to force its way through a really small vessel. And high blood pressure also damages those blood vessels. You can also, part of this dysregulation of the way the body creates and breaks down fat also starts to cause problems with bile acids. So bile acids are produced by your liver, and they are responsible for nutrient absorption. So vitamins A, D, E, and K, those fat soluble vitamins, are also responsible for calcium. They play a role in iron, magnesium. So we can start to see nutrient deficiencies develop. And bile acids also are important for the creation of glutathione, that mother antioxidant in the body. So we have more oxidative stress because we aren't producing the antioxidants to help our cells clean up, right? Clean up all that cellular debris and the toxins that they have to deal with. So it really creates this vicious cycle of disease. And anytime there's an acute or chronic disease state, your microbiome is altered. And when you're altering your microbiome, you're causing a whole a host of problems, right? So this is one of the reasons why I think diets that are the macronutrient profile that we have, which is high protein, moderate fat, low carb, are especially helpful. They're low carb, so we're not introducing this problem with high blood sugar, right? They are high protein because they help us build muscle, right? When we don't have enough protein, especially as we age, it becomes really, really hard to make muscle. We have higher protein levels to help with the formation of that muscle. And it's moderate fat, which we don't fully understand the way this or the reason why this happens, but high fat diets can contribute to insulin resistance. So we want to pay attention to the amount of fat that our dogs are consuming, our dogs and cats are consuming, especially as they get a little bit older.
And I would like to point out something that you just said something about microbiome. And if anyone has been watching the lives that we've been doing over the last month now, I think you will notice with every single person that I've had come on here, microbiome always gets talked about.
No, it does. Right?
I mean, if y'all are not realizing yet that everything relates back to the gut is huge. And how do you get there? And that is with food. And
yeah, can I share with you some really interesting things that I've been learning about the gut and its connection to the brain, right? And this goes to, maybe it's a little bit of a spoiler alert, but it's some of the things that I'm going to be talking about at the Feed Real Summit that's coming up in October. So, believe it or not, you have there are brain cells that exist outside your brain. And you have brain cells in your heart. You have brains, and you have as many brain cells in your gut as you have in your spinal cord.
Wow.
And so the communication between your gut and your brain travels along the vagus nerve. So your vagus nerve goes from the base of your brain down to your abdomen. And 90% of that traffic from between those two things, between your gut and your brain, 90% of it goes from your gut up to your brain. Only 10% is the brain telling the gut what to do. And what happens, and what we put in our gut is super important, right? I think so. There was this huge study that was done. I think it was 2020 by Pet Food Industry Trade Association. So these are the big guys like that Mars and Purina belong to, right? And they looked at 1,200, more than 1,200 dog foods and almost 600 cat foods. And they looked at the ingredients by tonnage that went into them. And so of the 8.65 million tons of ingredients that go into pet food, just take a wild guess as to what percentage of that is a green leafy vegetable. Just guess.
It's way less than 1%, I would think. I mean,
yeah, 0.05%.
Gosh.
So not really what you are led to believe when you look at a big bag of kibble, for instance, right? So I
want to cut you off for just 2 seconds and say something about that. For those of you that you've said that and now people are like, oh, I'm curious about what's in my pet's food. And, you know, a lot of these bags it'll be like with antioxidants like blueberries and kale or spinach or whatever nonsense they're spouting. If you flip over that bag of food and you see the word salt, and then after it, that is the ingredient, there is, what is it, 0.01% of whatever is in there. It's crazy. So they call it the salt divide. You can look it up. And I don't know the exact numbers now, but oftentimes these antioxidants that these big foods are putting into companies, on the ingredient deck, it comes after salt. So like, it's like they made this giant, huge thing of it and they threw one blueberry and they're like, oh, we can now say that's blueberry. So anyways, yeah. So there's your other fun fact for today.
Yeah. So we put a fair amount of green vegetables in our food, and it's important to know that doesn't come at the expense of protein, and it doesn't come at the expense of fat, and because green leafy vegetables hardly have any calories in them, right? And the polyphenols and those antioxidants and that are in green leafy vegetables and mushrooms, which we're going to start using mushrooms in our restorative diets at therapeutic levels, right? Not at like 1%, but the actual therapeutic levels. They with those beautiful compounds in them withstand heat really, 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 really well. And so when you put therapeutic levels of those things in there and you cook it, and lightly cook it, you're still getting the power of those things. So and using dark leafy greens, for instance, enables you to avoid synthetics, which is super important for us because, we haven't touched upon that yet. But synthetics, I really think are a huge contributor to the chronic disease that we're seeing in our companion animals, especially when we're talking about like things like synthetic phosphorus and synthetic choline. These things are extremely damaging to our blood vessels. So, and that's just science. We know that from science. We know it in human medicine from science. So,
and as someone who has a pet food store and I carry lots of food in here, it is very hard to find foods that don't have synthetics. And obviously we sell foods that have synthetics because you can't really get it right, but there are options out there. And we'll have to touch on that in a minute about synthetics.
Yeah. So we use some green leafy vegetables because, one of the first things that they do is they're fuel for it's what the good bacteria in our gut like to eat, right? And our dog's gut, lactobacillus and bacteroides are two species that are really healthy to have in our gut and in our dog's gut. And these critters like to eat plants. And so when plants aren't a normal part of the diet, this lactobacillus and bacteroides, they starve and die. And when they starve and die, they're not there to do some really important things. Like they help make short chain fatty acids, which are fuel for the epithelial cells that line the colon. They help us modulate our immune system. They help with glucose and energy homeostasis. They help regulate insulin. They connect us. This substance connects us to the circadian rhythm, this cycle, right, of sleep and wake hours. And lactobacillus and bacteroides also are involved in the production of our hormones and neurotransmitters. So like 95%, we used to think serotonin was made in the brain, and it is. But 95%, 90 to 95% of serotonin is actually made in the gut by lactobacillus and Bacteroides are big
There we go. Back
producers
to the
of
gut
it.
again.
And so when you're not getting enough green leafy vegetables in your diet, you're not getting enough of that feel good hormone, right? Um, they're also involved in the production of GABA, and GABA is this biochemical that is responsible for lowering stress levels and anxiety. So if you've got like a really hypersensitive dog, or a oh my God, the doorbell rang, oh my God, there's fireworks. It helps lower that stress response. Dopamine, right? It helps make dopamine, these guys. And dopamine is that risk reward kind of thing, or that motivational biochemical that says that if I do this, it's going to be pleasurable. It's going to feel really good. So like if I pay attention to mom's going to love me, and that's going to be great. Right. And so when we start to see behavioral problems in dogs, it can really stem from not getting enough vegetables in our diet. And one of the other things that ways that it manifests, and we see this in raw fed dogs actually, is hypersensitivities and food allergies, because they're not making those short chain fatty acids that kind of seal the lining of the gut. And so the gut, or the immune system, gets too good of a look at the contents of the gut and sets off alarms.
Which again, I mean, this just goes back to variety and adding things. And, I'm always adding things to whatever my dogs are eating. And, if you want to add some veggies and, you're feeding something else, use your leftover vegetables, as long as they're pet safe and not onions and things like that, but use them. Green Juju makes their veggie blend that makes it easy if you don't want to be chopping up and dicing things in your kitchen. Or in your case, you guys check all those boxes. So
yeah, happy to do it for you. But we actually, on our website, there on one of our blog posts, we have a diet for dogs and a diet for cats, right? I mean, there are people that just, it's hard. Good food is expensive, and I get it. Like, it's expensive, but also cheap food is really cheap, and
yeah,
and
and you
you,
will pay for it one
yeah,
day.
you go buy a big bag of kibble, a 30-pound bag of kibble for $50. And by the time you do the math and you back out everybody's profit margin and all that, because stores and distributors and manufacturers are in business to make money, when you finally back out the profit margin on that, you're probably feeding you 50 pounds. That company is buying 50 cents worth of ingredients to feed your 50-pound dog for a day. Like, it's just,
Which is crazy to me. The price of everything has gone up. So, people come in and you get sticker shock from even what bags of kibble cost. But when you think about how many pounds you're buying, like you just said, what is in the food, what that breaks down to a cost of per day, and then they want to make something, just think, like, sit back and think about that for a second. I mean, people forget, like, we go to the grocery store once a week, and that's food's gonna, feed us for a week or however long that may be. Typically, people buy pet food 1 month at a time. Or if you're like me, I'm crazy and it's something different every day. But people typically buy it 1 month at a time, and people are like, "Oh my God, I can't believe it costs this much." But when you break that down per day and what the ingredients are, it's really not that much. And you gotta think about it that way. And what you should not be able to buy a bag of food for $40.
no.
Like, you just shouldn't, for a big bag of kibble. Like, what on earth is in there? And fun fact, guys, go look up AFCO. And AFCO, for those of you do not know, that's who regulates pet food. And I'll use regulating loosely, because what AFCO allows in pet food is absolutely disgusting. And I think people think that we're just spouting off a bunch of nonsense in the store and we just want you to buy food in here. No, you should know what's in your food. You should know who makes your food. You should know who owns it. There's a movie that you guys can watch, and it's a little older now, so some things have changed, but the basics are still there. Pet Food. Go watch that movie, you guys. It's called Pet Food. You can find it on YouTube. It's on Netflix, I think. Still, I know it's on Amazon Prime. But what is allowed in pet food is absolutely disgusting. And this also goes to the big pet foods that the trusted caretakers of your pets are telling you to feed. Just go watch it.
Yeah. I mean, AFCO has their book, they allow formaldehyde. Like, it's an improved ingredient. You can put formaldehyde in there. You can put, not that you necessarily would, but you can put
Yeah.
formaldehyde. You can put chicken litter, like chicken shit. Like,
Yeah.
really,
Literally.
that can go with that
Wow,
food.
that's
But
an
it can,
increase.
and they have their ingredient definitions. These are the legal definitions. They allow certain amounts of heavy metals in your vitamins. Your vitamins and minerals are allowed to contain heavy metals, and for your pet, so you'd never know that. Like, yeah, and
As things have like progressed, you would think that like as we are progressing as a society and we kind of know what we should be eating and we're learning about it, our dogs are living less years than they used to.
yeah,
They're dying younger.
I
And
can.
yeah,
Yep, truthfully, it's the government, our beautiful, wonderful FDA on all of that. They look at our pets and our livestock as they're
property.
the right, or the free recycling program, right? I mean, we've got some level of um, national garbage to get rid of, sewage waste or whatever it is, and we're just going to turn it into fertilizer and feed.
Yeah,
And
awful. Lauren just pointed out a website that people should look at, and I'm going to put this up here
yeah,
right now.
awesome, Lauren.
Susan Thixton, she is an amazing advocate in the pet industry. She researches everything down to where things are made and what is
Yeah.
going on at their plants. And that is thetruthAboutPetFood.com. And she even has Susan Thixton's list every year that she does, where she analyzes every single thing that can be
Yes, it
analyzed.
does. We're on it. We
Um,
know.
and you guys made that list,
Yeah.
so kudos to you guys. But if you're not familiar with that website, everyone, go check it out. Susan really dives deep into things, and you brought up something earlier, and I've heard Susan speak before. You brought up there was a facility that people were getting sick, and some people even died that worked at that was a pet
Yeah.
food plant. And I'm not going to get in trouble for saying it on here, but y'all go look that up. You might be surprised who that company is. It's something that many people still feed. It's one of the big ones. So go watch that and go read about that. So sorry, we've gone on a lot of tangents here. Before you go, I would like you to touch on synthetics really quick because I
Yeah.
think it's very important, and I don't think a lot of people know. I think when we're talking to customers in the store about synthetics, we say, "Oh, it has zero synthetics," and I don't think people really know what that means a lot of times. And I think sometimes that gets brushed off as like, oh, it's one of their other little woo woo things that they're talking about. Who cares what a synthetic is? It's a kind of big deal. Let's talk about that real quick.
Yeah, for sure. So synthetics, is kind of a broad term to include either a natural or basically or a chemical, but a man-made nutrient,
To
right?
complete that profile of
To
to
complete
get
the
to
profile.
that like to get to that guaranteed analysis that you have to get per F code standards,
Right.
right?
Right.
Okay.
So if you see a label that has vitamins and minerals don't exist in those forms in nature. Like, you can't grow vitamins. Oh, I've just picked vitamin C off of a tree, right? No, you pick an orange off of a tree, but you don't pick vitamin C off of a tree, or vitamin E doesn't just grow as a root, right? So when you see those things on a label, they are man-made substances, and so they can make natural forms of them, but there is no regulatory definition of what natural is. So I'm going to give you an example of vitamin D, right? Vitamin D is the natural form of it is made by taking sheep fleece wool, uh, scrubbing it with a detergent or a solvent, getting the lanolin out of it, and then irradiating that lanolin to extract vitamin D. So the natural form of vitamin D involves both chemical solvents and detergents and irradiation, right? Vitamin E, that's another vitamin that we typically see. And I think that's one of the biggest markets, the global markets for vitamins is, vitamin E is one of them. And so vitamin E is just alpha tocopherol, right? It's just one tocopherol. But if you're going to find vitamin E in a food, so you typically might find that we use two sources of it. Our regular diets source it from organic sprouted sunflower seeds. One of our new kidney diet that's coming out sources it from wheat germ oil, right? Organic wheat germ oil. And so when you find it in those forms, you've got 8 isomers, there, and 4 tocotrienols. And, chemically speaking, you might not know what those things are, but what that means is that you've got a whole bunch of cofactors around that vitamin, or that make up that vitamin, that make that vitamin much more stable in the body and stable in the universe, right? To prevent the oxidation of fats in your body, right? And the formation of ales inside your body. It's also extremely in that whole food form. It's much more bioavailable, and it can be much more protective of your liver cells and your nerves. When we're talking about other forms of synthetics, like I think about, I mentioned phosphorus and choline earlier. So these are choline's a vitamin, phosphorus is a mineral, and these, AFCO's approved a dozen or more different forms of these synthetics. So synthetic or regular phosphorus is found in meat and bone, right? It's got a bioavailability of about 40 to 60%. But synthetic phosphorus has a bioavailability of 80 to over 100%, which means it's pulling phosphorus out of your body, right? Out of the places in your body. Once you ingest that synthetic, it jacks up parathyroid hormone, which activates vitamin D in your kidneys and puts calcium into circulation. And that can cause calcification of the soft tissues of your kidneys and your blood vessels. There's that blood vessel problem that we talked about earlier, right? Damage to blood vessels. Synthetic phosphorus has been called the signal molecule of aging in human food. And the forms that AFCO has approved are those things that we might find in processed meats, or soda pop, right? Sodium tripolyphosphate, dicalcium phosphate, right? This is not the natural form of it. Choline is another really good example. And I cringe when I see synthetic choline on kidney diet recipes, because synthetic choline, once ingested, rapidly produces TMAO, which is a toxin that is a known or suspected trigger of type 2 diabetes and a known trigger of adverse events, including mortality in cardiovascular disease cases, in kidney disease cases. So it's not, choline is naturally found in eggs. And when you eat eggs, it doesn't have that reaction in your body. Dr. Sharon Center out of Cornell is especially vocal about copper, right? There's synthetic copper. So copper is normally found in things like beef liver and oysters, right? It's got a bioavailability of 30 to 40%. And mammals are really adept with regulating natural sources of copper. Like, we eat too many oysters, we eat a lot of beef liver, we're just going to eliminate the excess copper in stool. But that's not the case with copper chelate. So you've got copper oxide, which is not a copper chelate, but pretty much every other form of copper that you're going to see on a label, copper proteinate, copper chelated copper bisglycinate or something, is a chelated copper. And what chelated coppers are, they've got a bioavailability of 80 to 90%, and they bioaccumulate in the liver, causing an insidious disease called copper-associated hepatopathy. And it has virtually no symptoms until it can be too late. I mean, one of the things maybe to look for is like hyper sensitivity, like overexcitement in your dog, because it can actually copper can convert dopamine to epinephrine, which is adrenaline. So if you've got a hyperactive dog, maybe that's a symptom.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but because copper is kind of it's not a new thing, but it's one of those things that's just now being kind of talked about in the pet food world. But AFCO has a minimum for copper, but they don't have a maximum.
No, they used to have a maximum years ago, and they
can just keep dumping it in and dumping it in, and now dogs are dying from copper disease.
Yeah. So and manufacturers, generally they'll buy these premix supplements. So that's when you see like a whole laundry list of synthetics on a label, it's because they bought a
Right, right.
ginormous mix of and so they just add it to formula after formula with little to no regard to the nutrient value in the base formulation. And they don't have to pay attention to it because there's no regulatory requirement that they
Right.
don't have to exceed. And Susan Thixton she found, I think it was the Missouri Department of Agriculture, believe it or not, does some random testing. And she found that they had reported some pet foods with copper levels. I think it was like 600% over minimum. So it's a real problem. And, Dr. Sharon Center has called copper associated hepatopathy an avoidable and tragic nutritionally provoked canine illness that stems from that 1997 change by AFCO to highly bioavailable copper chelates at physiologic at levels that exceed the physiologic tolerance for many healthy dogs. So it's, I would, if I were buying a food that had a chelated copper in it, I would ask that manufacturer for the full nutritional profile, because you want to see that copper in there is as close to the AFCO minimum as possible.
Well, because your food manufacturers are more, especially the big ones. I don't really mean the small ones, but the big ones, they just want to meet that minimum. And if there's no maximum, they're just going to keep dumping it in there just so they make sure they hit that minimum profile. But are you saying that, because we know what, you find copper in naturally, if you feed a bunch of beef livers or whatever that has a lot of copper, your body will get rid of when it's in its natural form, if it's extra, right? But if it's synthetic, your body stores it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I am. Unless there are certain dogs like Bedlington Terriers that have a genetic predisposition to not process copper appropriately. But generally, in the general population of dogs, copper from food is not natural copper like you're going to find in beef liver and wherever, oysters. We use oysters as a source, but you're not going to have a problem with it.
Okay. Awesome. I mean, I think overall, we could talk about all of these things for like 1,000 hours because it just keeps going.
I'm kind of a geek, so
read your labels, everyone. Whether you're here or you're across the country and you're watching this, if you buy food from Nautical Dog or you buy it somewhere else, like read your labels. I mean, email the manufacturer, email them and ask them what these things are. If they don't know the answer to it and they can't, if they say they can't get it for you, in news, I've heard this, some of these companies will say that it's proprietary information. Hello, red flag. No, you should know. So watch that and keep an eye on those things. Find out things.
Yeah.
Be your pet's advocate. I mean,
never be afraid to ask, and don't take, don't, if you feel like you've been brushed off, you have been ask for more. Right?
Absolutely. So I do want to raffle off this book here. If anyone has any questions, drop them below. We'll try to answer them, but also you can email Goodness Gracious, and they're real small, you guys, so you'll probably get Amy or Alyssa that answers the question for you. But we carry your full line in the store, and we're really excited about the new stuff coming up. But let's raffle off this book. If you're watching and you haven't commented with that hashtag, please comment right now with the hashtag The More You Know, because that is going to get you into this. And the summit is coming up in 2 weeks. Goodness Gracious is a sponsor. They will be there for their things, we'll have the treats at the show. You'll be able to see them. Obviously, the Frozen, you're going to have to walk over to Nautical Dog to see it. But the venue is only a block away, so you'll be able to see it. So, all right, let's raffle off this book. This is a hot commodity. Apparently, it is already the New York #1 bestseller. First recipe book ever for dogs and cats that has made that list. So, which is amazing. So anyways, all right, let me do this. Hang on, you guys. Takes a second to pull this up. Okay, we ready? And I'm going to actually give away 2 books because I'm feeling really nice today, you guys. And y'all have listened to us for over an hour ramble on about sciencey things that are fun and interesting. All right, so here is the first one.
Woo!
You have won one of these books. And now I'm going to do one more because, for fun, why not? Everyone needs a book if you don't have it.
I feel like this is a game show.
I know. Really, Sherry,
Yay, Sherry. Yay, Gwen. Yay, Sherry.
if you guys do not live local, please send me a DM to the store here, and we will get that in the mail. I will mail out these books next week or at the end of this week. I'm going to wait till after the live with Rita Hogan. If you are local, stop by the store to pick it up. And Amy, thank you for coming on. You are such a wealth of knowledge. If you come to the summit, make sure you stop by her table, say hello
Yeah,
to her, ask
please.
questions away.
It's wonderful to connect with people. So,
and if you are local to me, come pick up some Goodness Gracious. Your dogs and cats will love it. If you don't want to dive into the whole gently cooked thing, it is a great food topper, and some is better than nothing. So thank you everyone for coming on. Come back, watch again on Friday at 1:00. The Rita Hogan, canine herbalist, is going to be on here talking about summertime and dogs and cats and all the things that can ail them. And Rita's got a trick for everything. So thank you, everyone. And I will see you guys on Friday.
thanks, Amanda. Thank you, everybody. Bye.